Now, there are lots of ways to think about the first chapter of Genesis, the creation of the world. And the way that you, have probably studied the first book of Genesis is that it is a series of to-dos. It is a task list that God on day 1 separates light from darkness, check that box. Day 2, God comes to work on a Monday or a Tuesday, and God continues by creating a vault. And day 3, God continues by creating vegetation, and 4, and the fish, and the sea, and then on 6, and then he takes a PTO day on day 7. But that's actually not a very good way of thinking about creation. A better way of looking at Genesis 1 is to think about God as a great painter like Leonardo da Vinci. To think about God as a great artist who begins his creation with a blank tapestry. So I want to walk us through Genesis 1 today, and we're going to focus on 7, the seventh day, because of course this is the 7th series, and that is where God brings completion and wholeness into the text. And I don't want to walk you through each little scintilla of this text. I instead want to try to be like an artist and give you big, broad brushstrokes, pun intended, about this text. So let's look at Genesis 1, and we're looking at God's creation as if he was Leonardo da Vinci, an artist. Let's begin. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Now again here, imagine this is God sitting before a great tapestry, and there's nothing on it. And like a great artist with a palette and perhaps a beret and a paintbrush in his mouth, he examines and he looks at this canvas for who knows how long, a year, a month, a decade, a millennia, eternity. God is just sitting and looking at this empty canvas. And then God begins to paint. And God said, "Let there be light," like Leonardo da Vinci. And there was light, and he separated the light in the most beautiful way from the darkness. Interestingly, God's paintbrush is not a paintbrush, but his tongue. Here's my favorite discovery about this very creation story. You've probably heard the phrase abracadabra. My kids say it all the time when they've got a magic wand, abracadabra. But it's actually a Hebrew word, and the Hebrew word is ivra da kadabra, which means I will create as I speak. So God creates as he speaks. And let's just look at God's painting. Again, I don't want us to look at it as if this is like a math equation, but more like a Jackson Pollock painting. And so God steps back and he says, "Let there be a vault between the waters, and the waters down below and the waters up above." And then a little longer in this painting, Leonardo da Vinci says, "Let the land produce vegetation, seed bearing, and trees. Let there be light and sky." And with his great tongue, his great paintbrush, he creates it. Let the land produce vegetation, and he creates all of these things. And 13 billion years later, you can still feel the energy and the passion and the excitement and the joy that God has in creating this great tapestry. And he continues with this painting. He says, "I have an idea. Let the water teem with living creatures, birds, every living thing." And then God continues with his creation. And of course, on day 6, he creates humans. And if we had the time, I could talk about how, as Leonardo da Vinci was studying the human form in that great painting, The Vitruvian Man, which many of you are so familiar with, there is a connection between God and the cross and creation and churches like ours. We don't have the time, but there is a connection here. So God does all of these things. Now let's get to the 7, because it's essential for you to have more 7 in your life, and it is essential for you to focus now. He says this, the book says this, "By the 7th day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the 7th day, he rested from all of his work. Then God blessed the 7th day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work that he had been doing." Now again, the word in Hebrew for rested is menuha. Would you say that with me? Menuha. And menuha can mean like rest. It can mean like take a day off. But a better translation here is to step back, to enjoy, to recline, to observe, to be calm, to lie down. And so that's what God does on the seventh day after creating this beautiful canvas. He steps back from his work and he says, ha, 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 I did it. Ha, I love it. Isn't it amazing? It's amazing. It's complete. I'm finished. And those of you who know your Bible know that as Jesus recreates humanity as he hangs on the cross, he says that very phrase, I'm finished. I'm finished. It is done. God steps back after all that work. I've sometimes wondered whether if I was God, I might have instead on the seventh day attempted to take a day off, but if I'd have instead gone to my emails on that day and I might have gone over a small thing that I could have done the week before. I could have done that lily a little differently. I could have put a little bit more wingspan on the mosquito. I could have helped that snake to have a little more poison. I wonder if I was God, if I would have had that temptation. Well, here's my big question for you today. Are you more like Leonardo da Vinci, who was an amazing painter, but he never stopped, he never rested? Or are you more like God, who after 6 hard days of work, of joy, of creating this beautiful painting, was able to step back? Are you able to leave your work at work and not bring it home? Are you able to say, after whatever project that you have, I did my best, and then not keep pondering and picking at it, tweaking it? Are you able to sit back and enjoy what you just did, to do that? Isn't that amazing?